with a male criminal because he claims he really is a woman. Of course, Will isn't afraid. None of this affects him. Jennifer Say said, "Males entering women's private spaces is threatening, Will. No, not for you, but maybe a bit of empathy for women is in order." Exactly. I mean, male bikers in...
But again, Will isn't in opposition to any of that. At no point in that trailer or in the statements Will Ferrell has made has he said that he wants more men to enter women's spaces and abuse women. See the grip for what it is. Brett Cooper is basically one of the Daily Wire hires who's trying to appear like she's a streamer. She used to have an actual streamer room. Turned out the whole thing was a set. They actually gave her fake headphones and like a fake streamer setup, and a lot of people sort of pointed it out, and you know, she got mocked quite a bit, and then they eventually kind of dropped the whole act, and now it's like clearly that she's in a actual kind of studio setup, but she still does the kind of like the Zoomer outreach, you know, the younger demographic of Turning Point USA eventual Republicans watch, I guess, this content, I assume, or maybe it's more just for boomers who want to be like, oh, the kids are all right, you know, they hate the queer kids too, so we're not all bigots, everyone's like us. I don't really know who on the Daily Wire is watching this, but a lot of people is the answer, because she's quite popular and has been a very, very popular breakthrough Daily Wire co-host. But she's going after Will Ferrell now. If you don't know, Will Ferrell just released a documentary, and the documentary is about his journey as a cis man learning about trans issues because his best friend is trans, and going through that process, doing what I am sure a lot of cis people have had to do at one point in their lives when they realize they didn't know shit about shit, which is just, yeah, part of being cis. No shame in it. We've all gone through it. All of us sissies. All of us have had to be like, oh, okay, well, I was a bigot. I was fundamentally wrong. I was transphobic. Absolutely, I was. You know, I've had to learn a lot about these issues and realize that these are not men in drag. This is not people with mental illness. This is not people who may think that they were, you know, born in the wrong body. All that kind of stuff. It's people who are misidentified at birth, and they should have the same rights as everyone else. Usually, what people, again, with any degree of empathy or, you know, a heart will arrive at that conclusion eventually. So Will Ferrell makes the documentary, and it's I can play the trailer for you. It looks very wholesome and beautiful, and it's a really good thing that Will's using his massive ass voice and platform to do this. But apparently it's pissing off some people on the right.
Funny in recent years as he falls deeper and deeper into the comedic limitations that the woke left requires. Now, this spiral is absolutely commemorated in his latest film called Will and Harper, which is a documentary-style movie that documents his friendship with former SNL head writer Andrew Steele. Well, actually, sorry, it's now Harper Steele, who at 60 years old came out as a woman. And Will Ferrell thought that the best way to try and understand his friend in this new era was by driving across the country together, deep diving into the tough questions about transgenderism while simultaneously facing the treatment of his transgender friend across the evil American countryside.
Now, I know there's this idea that the left ruined comedy, and wokeness has destroyed the ability for comedians to make jokes because they'll get canceled. You can't make jokes anymore, or the cancel culture comes for you. It seems like every single time a comedian comes out and says that, it's to promote some shitty-ass movie they're coming out with or some shitty-ass comedy special that they've been, once again, given a massive-ass platform to have, but it's usually like, I got canceled. The left canceled me, so I'm going to talk about it in my 2.5-hour Netflix special, and then we're going to probably have a sitcom released after that, an animated series, and I'm going to be doing a full podcast going on Joe Rogan, all these massive-ass things to talk about how little reach I have now, thanks to these horrifying lefties who have canceled and ended comedy. You might have remembered this guy, a person who had at one point dated a 17-year-old, I believe, Jerry Seinfeld, considered by many to be a legend in the comedy world. He blamed the woke for destroying comedy. Do you all remember that? He's like, oh, the left has ruined comedy. They've removed the ability for comedians to even engage with their audiences. The left have destroyed it. He then, it turned out, was releasing one of the worst comedy films of all time. It bombed so far as a Netflix series can bomb. And it got, you know, trashed by reviewers who were like, this was terrible. He's now walked that back, by the way. So he has recanted. He has said that the left, in fact, did not destroy comedy. That was a bit, I guess. Comedian Jerry Seinfeld has seemingly changed his tune, expressing regret over comments he made earlier this year claiming the extreme left killed comedy. In April, the 70-year-old Unfrosted creator said, PC crap has together put an end to the true TV comedy at a time when people need lighthearted laughter the most. During a conversation with The New Yorker, Seinfeld said, current TV programs are unfunny because writers are worried so much about offending other people. You couldn't make shows today like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia because of the woke. They prevented that show from ever coming to pass. You see? Now Seinfeld is walking back those comments. In an appearance on comedian Tom Papa's Breakfast Bread podcast, Seinfeld insists he had to take back what he said in April. Seinfeld said it is not true that the extreme left has suppressed the art of comedy. He used the skiing analogy to illustrate his point. If you're a champion skier, you can get past the gates anywhere you want on the mountain and you're going to make the gate. That's comedy. Whatever the culture is, we make the gate. You don't make the gate, you're out of the game. The game is where the gate is and how I do make the gate to get down that hill. Seinfeld admitted that culture has changed and there are certain things that he would have said in his comedy act years earlier but are no longer appropriate. You can't say certain words about groups. So what? The accuracy of your observation has to be 100 times finer than that just to be a comedian, he said. It's not my business to like or not where the culture is at. It's my business to make the gate, the stick, with my skiing analogy. So I present to you my skiing analogy apology, in that maybe it's not the woke left that destroyed comedy, and maybe he's just not funny anymore. Or he doesn't know how to be funny anymore. Or, again, if you can't be funny without the use of slurs, it's just like, oh, well, I mean, come on. This joke wouldn't be as funny if I can't say the N-word, for example. Maybe it's not that funny a joke. Maybe you should do some self-reflection where it's like, oh, this joke will really land if I just dehumanize one group of people. And it's like, but is that the purpose of the joke then? Is that what makes the joke funny? Is a bunch of people being like, I can't believe he just said that. Oh, we're not allowed to say that in pleasant conversation anymore. Ooh, taboos have been broken.
And while they intended to create this film to prove their theory that America is a dangerous place to be transgender, it ended up proving quite the opposite, which contradicts basically everything the media tells us.
Oh.
Before we dive into this story, though, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the comment section channel if you've not already, and of course, hit that notification bell to make sure you stay up to date on all of our episodes. All right, so the trailer for this movie came out at the beginning of September, and the movie
Normal streamer stuff, you know.
is now available.
Turning to the other cameras that you have set up in your, studio where you have people filming you and then editing you and then being like, all right, can you turn to camera 3, please? Yes, all right, yeah, good job, streamer.
To stream on Netflix. It was also in select theaters, and the reception has just been mixed. Some people are proud that they canceled their Netflix subscription before this came out, while others are obviously praising this heartwarming, revolutionary, and brave film. Stunning, and brave from Will Ferrell.
You did this for what?
Why not?
Why?
Why not?
Why, though?
And the whole thing is kind of jarring because it's not a comedy, although it looks like one. It kind of feels like the long-awaited.
This does, I mean, I'm not the target demographic. I'm a millennial, so I'm too old to truly understand what's happening here. But I guess you Zoomers understand this Zoomer comedy. So in between what she's talking about, it cuts to a clip from something unrelated, but that actually is kind of funny because it's like that's also a reference you might get from another show. It's and then the memes within the memes. Man, you Zoomers have good shit.
And surprising sequel to The Step Brothers.
Did we just become best friends? Yep!
But let's just get a taste of the trailer.
Hi there. I'm Will Ferrell, one of the greatest actors in the world. A long time ago, back when I was at Saturday Night Live, I met a guy who was hired as a writer the same week I was hired. He wrote a bunch of sketches for me and eventually became the head writer of SNL. And over the years, he became one of my closest friends. And then one day, I got this email. Hey, Will, something I need you to know. I'll be transitioning to live as a woman.
I don't doubt that Will is my friend.
Again, the fact that this is a drama, that this is serious, is...
It's a documentary. Documentaries can be a many splendid thing. They can have comedic parts, they can be funny, they can be on a funny topic, but ultimately it's a story that he wants to tell with his platform and use it. So if you're like, it's kind of weird this comedian makes this funny movie and then like all of a sudden it goes from being like what I thought was supposed to be funny because he was obviously making a self-deprecating joke at the start that like obviously was for comedic purposes, but then gets drama and serious. We're supposed to believe this is a serious thing.
the most insane part of this. Like, this should be a comedy. The right thing to do would be to frame this as a comedic documentary style movie. And yet it's 2024, so no, we can't do this. This is the most serious piece of filmmaking that has come out of 2024.
I feel like you're really struggling to find something to hate about this because, again, it just is a very, very wholesome idea for a film. And some people might say, well, it's insulting to even choose this as subject matter. again, way too cis to comment on whether or not, within the community of trans people, how they reflect upon this, what they think of the film. I'd love to know if this is something that is well received within the trans community and if they consider it to be beneficial towards getting the message out there. I'll say this as a cis person who tries to usually convince other cis people that trans rights are human rights, that it is good to have things like this where, maybe your aunt or your uncle or your parents or someone who might still be like, well, I just kind of feel like this is adults playing make-believe, or I feel like maybe there are some people who might think that they are something they're not, but maybe it's like the culture that is influencing that or something like that. It's really different when it's like, hey, by the way, this is someone you probably love and adore. Will Ferrell, but one of the greatest legends of comedy in history, right? Someone who's not only, established himself as one of the greatest SNL cast members, but moved on to create some of the greatest classic comedy films of, multiple generations. So someone like that, who you already identify with, already enjoy his content, he is really taking a risk, putting himself out there and then saying, hey, by the way, I'm a cis ally. Hey, by the way, I am someone who has gone through, I have a lived experience of living with a best friend who transitioned later in life, and obviously along that I had to learn a lot of shit. I had to realize that maybe there's a lot of things about this topic that I myself had either internalized biases or bigotry towards, and I had to overcome. And then along the way, like a lot of people do, I obviously learned what was wrong about my old way of thinking.
But I'm not Andrew Steele anymore.
It was just, whoa.
I love this country so much. I just don't know if it loves me back right now.
Harper, would you want to do a road trip as this new version of yourself and at the same time figure out what this all means to us?
Drama.
Were you a little worried about how to talk to me when I came out to you?
Yeah, probably a little nervous.
There are no ground rules with friends, I'm telling you. I invite any friend of mine to ask me these questions. I am not afraid to talk about them.
There's a question. Do you think you're a worse driver as a female driver?
That's the dumbest. That's so, no, that is so, oh, you.
Zing!
But I am.
Woo!
Yeah.
Oh.
It's got to be weird when you hate watch, because like you have to, right? You have to, for the audience that you are cultivating, be like, this is disgusting. This is not funny. And this is not even impactful or moving or touching in any way. Like, look at this garbage. But you have to sit there and it's like, oh, that's actually a pretty wholesome looking trailer. So it seems like a pretty noble project to embark upon.
Oh, yeah. This is my friend Harper.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you, bro.
Hey, not a bro, though. It's a she, but that's okay.
Sorry.
Remember that. That's going to be important.
This is probably around.
Yeah, what's it going to be? Oh, that she was treated nice, that someone actually affirmed her gender after she corrected them. Cool. That's beautiful. Oh, but it's that trans people don't actually have any real difficulty in society because of that one instance and that one clip. Like, clearly, oh yeah, you're so oppressed, and yet people were nice to you in the clip that you saw.
In the age where I started to feel just kind of weird.
Yeah.
I used to come out to these kind of places before, and then I transitioned and I got a little afraid. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, come out.
And we just need to pause right there, because right there in that moment, without even having to watch the movie, we have stumbled upon the problem with this film and the problem with its premise. Now, obviously, if you guys want to watch the entire thing, it is on Netflix. If you want to watch the entire trailer, you can find that on YouTube. But basically what you need to know, you saw in this trailer, because as they travel through middle America, as you can see in the trailer, the people don't care. Like, I guarantee they care more about their internet privacy than they do about...
Ooh, I did. I'll give it to you. That was so fast, so quick, you don't even notice. Almost feels as if everything that you're doing is either scripted or just part of a well-planned out series of events. Where it's just like, are you talking genuinely because this is like an actual introspective idea that came into your brain? Or is it basically like, all right, now how do I move this right into the segue on the, hey, by the way, you got that VPN? You got a better one coming up like that? Ooh, yeah, quick, so smooth. Yeah, didn't even notice it.
Mistakenly called him bro, he quickly apologized, he did not react further, and then at a very Americana, very redneck racetrack, another man simply tells Steele to not be afraid and to come out and watch if he likes it. And then just watch this last clip.
I'm not really afraid of these people. I'm afraid of hating myself.
There you go. I mean, that was probably the most important moment of the entire trailer. I mean, Steel
Maybe, but not for the reasons that you're saying or thinking right now. Because, like, again, it's one of those journeys of self-discovery where there's nothing wrong with you at all. You're homosexual, bisexual, pansexual, asexual. Nothing wrong with you at all. But society doesn't treat you that way. Same thing applies. That if you're cis versus trans, if you're trans, a lot of society, a cis-normative society, may treat you as hostile. You may have negative experiences. You may have to reaffirm to people consistently that they're using the wrong gender or something to that effect. So yeah, it can be a challenge. And then that challenging scenario is what makes a lot of, especially LGBTQ plus kids, hate themselves. And a lot of them want to change themselves. Like, one of the saddest things about watching real documentaries on conversion therapy or people who survived conversion therapy is listening to how many people are just like, I genuinely wanted to not be gay anymore. I hated this part of myself. I wanted there to be a solution. I wasn't going there to try and fight the priests and the preachers who were, trying to convince us that we're all going to hell if we do these things. I wanted to go there to become straight, because if I become straight, I become normal. That's the big thing, right? Like, if I'm straight, then my parents won't hate me. If I'm straight, other people won't make fun of me. If I'm straight, I'm not seen as this really small percentage of people who don't happen to be the norm in society. So maybe then I can go back to having a normal life, and I won't get, I won't hate myself as much. That kind of shit. Profoundly sad. And obviously anyone who's come out the other end and survived all that can tell you that you are normal, you are beautiful. It's society that's fucked up, and it's society that's wrong, and society that needs to change. That's why movies like this that Will Ferrell made, they are important. That's why, yeah, I'm sure, and in the trailer and I'm sure in the film, there's a lot of coverage of people can genuinely be nice, and a lot of people are genuinely nice, and a lot of people don't have a perpetual hatred in their heart for trans people the way the right does, or the way the right-wing media does. And this idea that, like, hey, by the way, anywhere you go, there's going to be like right-wingers who are trying to be mean to you. There's probably not going to be right-wingers in every corner of the world who are just as hate-filled as she is, or every other Daily Wire host is, and all this kind of stuff. But of course, there's going to be challenges that you as a trans person will experience that people who are cis don't even think of, right? Like, I never in my life think of, when I go into a social scenario, someone's going to sit down and be like, she, her, they, them. Like, that's never happened to me. Not once. I've never in my life had someone be like, oh, so you're a woman, right? No. Like, I'm a man. I identify as a man. I'm a cis man. These are not things that ever come up in my day-to-day life. I don't walk into every single time I go to a supermarket wondering if I get in this line, someone's going to be like, hey, dude, bro, you, yeah, man, come over here. You're up next, right? I don't have to worry about those kind of fears. That is what a lot of trans people talk about having to deal with a lot of the time, And, like, it's one of those things where it's good if you're not in that group to learn about how that group is affected, broadly speaking, by society.
says the key line, I'm not really afraid of these people. I'm afraid of hating myself. And that goes against literally everything that we've been told, everything that the media has been screaming at us for years. I mean, it's almost like gender dysphoria is in the American Psychiatric DSM. Wow. Almost like it is a personal issue. And almost like this terrible transphobia and the threats of trans people just being killed aren't actually real. As Steve...
You're doing it right now. Right now, literally. As you're trying to make a point about how this is not a real phenomenon, you are doing the hatred and the bigotry that can make people hate themselves. Because immediately it's just like, hey, by the way, apparently you're supposed to have like some difficulties in societies, but we're always told that we're supposed to actually be nicer to trans people or something like that. And then in the trailer to a film, not the film, I haven't seen it, but in the trailer to the film, it seemed like some people were nice. So that means, ergo, vis-a-vis, transphobia doesn't exist, right? And so like, do you even really have to suffer? And it's almost as if like the real problem they have is with themselves. Why would someone hate themselves based on how they were born? Because again, if cis folks were consistently vilifying trans people or trying to make it appear as if the only way to be normal is to be cis, then yeah, maybe that contributes towards that. The same thing happens with gay kids, right? It's like gay kids, a lot of them do end up hating themselves profoundly because they find out that society doesn't treat them the same way they treat straight people. And society makes them hate themselves, and people make them hate themselves, and teachers and other students can make them hate themselves, and constantly vilifying and bullying them, that contributes towards that self-hate. But it's, again, one of those things where if you look at study after study, if you look at the meta-analysis of the studies that have been done on this topic, having a more welcoming atmosphere for LGBTQ plus kids lowers the levels of anxiety, lowers the levels of depression, lowers the levels of suicidal ideation, all of that. You improve the quality of lives of these children by not treating them like lepers, by not treating them like outsiders, by treating them as what they are, normal. And that's a really important thing.
Stephen L. Miller pointed out on X. He said, "What's so interesting about this is that Farrell's own film proves that people aren't threatened by trans people. His own film literally shows him taking his trans friend to country hit."
His own trailer. Because again, you haven't got into... I watched the movie, and when I watched the film, okay, fine, there was a couple scenes where things got a little bit aggressive, but for the most part, people were very nice. They were nice to her. They used she, her pronouns. They were very friendly. But it's just like, well, in the trailer, there's a scene where initially someone misgenders her, but then afterwards is nice. So at that point, it disproves the entire purpose of the movie.
Bars and dirt car hick races filled with Trump voters, and none of them care. There's even a scene where he, she, they says that they're scared to come out to places like this, and then it turns out that...
Why would you do this? Again, it's one of those things where like you are in real time doing the bigotry towards these people. Again, just it's like, hey, this trans person has identified who they are. You know what gender they are. It's a she. It's she, her. So she... There's no reason to misgender her in your description of why she doesn't experience any kind of bigotry. You're being bigoted in that very statement.
They all basically just say, hey, do what you want to do. It's the Borat syndrome. Borat went into a Christian conservative's home in a bag to try to outrage them, and they were still polite and caring to him. The Netflix film about Farrell's trans friend proves the exact opposite point of the trans genocide bigotry that they try to push. That was the takeaway from it. Could not have said it better myself. Now,
no, I know you can't, because again, you're both bigoted, but it's just wild. So you can see, even in their own statements, trying to be like, this is a non-problem. Bigotry doesn't exist. We're going to be really bigoted when we make this point, by the way. He, she, they apparently was having trouble in life. It's like, well, you're doing it in real time, though. You're still contributing towards it.
even though that is what is obviously discovered in this film, that just is not the politically appropriate way to talk about it. You have to continue to talk about the transphobia, say that it's a huge issue, as well as continue to do throughout the film's press junket. And earlier this week, a quote from him went viral where he said, "Transphobia exists because I think we fear what we don't know." Quote, "I don't know why trans people are meant to be threatening to me as a cis male." Oh my God, stop with it. "I don't know why Harper is threatening."
Stop with what? What? I don't get the part of this that's like, oh my God, I can't believe he would say this.
To me. Why would you care if somebody's happy? Why is that threatening to you? If the trans community is a threat to you, I think it stems from not being confident or safe with.
It's also fun when people read things out and they don't actually absorb anything from the content in real time. Because like instead of taking that sentence and being like, oh wow, this is actually a moment of self-reflection for me, that actually is kind of true. What do I have to fear from another? Why do I want to restrict the healthcare of a group I don't belong to? In a lot of cases, you don't have trans children, you don't have trans friends, you don't have trans associates or people you work with, so you don't know anyone or are trans yourself, but at the same time, you want to enact legislation that restricts their healthcare. You want to enact legislation that prevents them from being able to participate in certain events. You want to make sure that they can't enter certain bathrooms, they can't play on sports teams. All of that is stuff that you want to work towards doing when you're not a part of that group. In the same way that people work so hard to be like anti-gay marriage, stop gay people from getting married when they're not gay. And it's like, so what does this take away from you? Well, it ruins the idea of what marriage is for me. How? One man, one woman. So, I mean, two guys, two women get married. That idea just, but like, you don't have to marry a guy. No one's forcing you to marry anybody. We're just saying that other people who want to get married should be able to, like everyone else. It doesn't concern you. It doesn't affect you at all. Like, why do you want to involve yourselves in their lives, or their sex lives, or their bedroom, or their healthcare, or their doctor, or anything related? Like, why? What does that have to do with you? How are you involved?
Yourself. And this quote literally made me want to smash my head into a wall, because here's the thing. Most people, like myself, do not care if you are an adult and you want to go by a different name or
you made a whole video on this. This is your video uploaded that you made. Even if it's scripted and someone else wrote the script for you and you're just acting it out, this is still something that you are being told to care about for the benefit of your Daily Wire viewers who are going to watch this and be now big mad. Like, oh my God, I didn't know Will Ferrell went woke. I thought he was a funny guy. But apparently he's like trying to tell us that being trans is okay. How dare he? How dare he say such things?
Stress or whatever. I might think it's weird, but hey, it is your life. If you are an adult, you do you in your own home, in your own personal life. If I meet you out on the street, in a restaurant, I genuinely would not care. You
made a whole video on this. I'm assuming if I looked at your channel, this isn't the only video on trans people, even though you don't care about them at all and don't want to talk about them. And this is definitely just like a random topic that you had to come across. But if I was to look at all these videos that you've been doing lately, let's see. Already, 4 in. This man pretended to be trans for 6 months. And by the way, if you don't know the story, someone did, yes, pretend to be trans for 6 months and was treated very nicely in the process by lefties.
Listen, guys, I am
that's the whole
about
story.
fed up with the nonsense.
Sorry, I didn't know that it was all. But yeah, that's the big story that the right loved, that someone pretended to be trans, like Steven Crowder does, in order to infiltrate lefty spaces, and everyone was very nice to them. And that's the big story there. So, yeah. And then it goes for a while. Gays for Harris. Okay, so LGBTQ plus there. Florida man. Trans coach is allowed to change with the girls. Another video on trans people. The BFF ones. So we've got 3 on the front page already. The revolt of female athletes has begun. So we got 4. Ditching traditional college, problem with men, could be something in there as well. But okay, so just on the front of your channel already, 4 videos on a topic that you apparently don't care at all about.
Even have a nice conversation with you at the checkout line or while we're waiting for our coffee, as I have done many, many times before. But where I and most other common sense people do start to have a problem and actually become threatened is, number 1, when you push this ideology on children with developing minds, encourage
No one's done that. No one. Yeah, so that doesn't happen. So again, made up ideas and phantoms, ghosts of your own design. Horrors, I know. The very idea that children are going to be indoctrinated into becoming trans, you can't do that any more than you can make kids into cis kids. Can't do it in any of the categories, actually. You can't turn kids into being gay and then can't turn them into being straight either. No, there's no such thing. No such thing as just indoctrinating kids into becoming all of these categories that you're really afraid of. Again, like, it's your own bigotry. That's for you to unpack. I think Will was really on point when he said that. Again, this is the insecurity coming from cis people who don't truly understand a topic and then feel threatened by it because they don't know anything about it. And then you're seeing that play out here in real time, being like, hey, I got no problem if you want to exist. Well, thank you. That's nice. That's just really nice, just being like, hey, I got no problem if you literally are not going to be, beat up on the street for simply who you are, but just keep it away from the kids, and I may contribute towards people getting maybe violent towards people like you and want to beat you up on the street. That's also a thing.
them to do irreversible damage to their bodies that they might regret later on, threatening to take children away from their parents if their parents do not fall into line. We have a problem and we become threatened when, number 2, you demand that the science changes to accept you biologically as the opposite gender and demand.
Wow. So you've really thought this out for someone who doesn't care at all about this topic, and apparently this is something like, oh, no, I've not really thought about this at all, but I do have a bit of a prepared speech here for all of you, and it's full of nonsense. Again, not real things. No one is pushing ideology on children that is effectively turning them trans and forcing them to become trans in order to benefit big medical or big transition to an industry where people are just, I guess, reaping the benefits every single day from trying to force kids into transitioning. Just not a thing, not a real thing. And yeah, there's a danger to children who are LGBTQ plus of being kicked out of their families, being abused by their parents, being abused by their schoolmates, being homeless. Nearly half of all homeless youth are LGBTQ plus, so that's a real concern and danger. So yeah, they should be protected, absolutely, in the same way that all kids should be protected.
That medical care be changed to be more inclusive, like calling women bleeders and chest feeders so that you aren't triggered. That is unacceptable.
When, who, when, what? Who's doing that? I deal a lot with, like, LGBTQ plus activists, some of the biggest names, in terms of people who are visible on social media and stuff like that. Not a single one of them has ever said that you need to call women bleeders. Never heard that. And I've heard right-wing misogynist men refer to women in that way. I've never heard of a trans activist say that you can no longer call a woman and that you distinctly have to call them bleeders or people who get pregnant exclusively, stuff like that.
Acceptable. And number 3, and something that's very personal to me and so many other women, is that women are literally physically threatened when huge biological men invade their spaces, when they expose themselves in locker rooms with young girls.
Why not go after the people who do that then? Because statistically, it's not trans people, it's cis people. Cis straight men, actually. Cis straight men, the majority of people who are assaulting women, the majority of people who are committing sexual assault, the majority of people who are abusing people. Trans people, LGBTQ plus people, more often the victims of sexual assault and physical abuse instead of the perpetrators. So again, if that's a problem you actually care about, of which I do as well, I think that, the men who are going out and sexually assaulting women should be stopped and prevented from doing that. Let's go after the people who do it then. Let's not scapegoat vulnerable minorities and then make it safer for the abusers to get away with what they're doing in the process. Because the whole thing runs cover for them, right? Why go after the actual people who commit all these sexual assaults, cis straight men, when we can go after, again, trans people and pretend like they're the problem?
Has been done in gyms around the country when biological men compete against and with women in sports, taking away opportunities that women have worked for years, sometimes permanently injuring them in the process because you are, on average, 40% stronger than women. And hormones and surgery will not change that. Somebody commented.
It does, actually. It has profound effects on the physical anatomy of a human, which is one of the reasons why the Olympic Committee, I would say, you know, a body that knows infinitely more about this than I do. I'm not sportsman, all right? I'm not the football guy over here who's just really good at sports, and I really got a lot of talk about on this topic. But yeah, it turns out that being on things like HRT for 2 years can dramatically impact and change the way a lot of your body performs and functions. So I would say that it's actually the opposite.
And said, Will Ferrell showing exactly what luxury beliefs means. Maybe Will should put himself in the shoes of a woman in prison, forced to house with a male criminal because he claims he really is a woman. Of course, Will isn't afraid. None of this affects him. Jennifer Say said, males entering women's private spaces is threatening, Will. No, not for you, but maybe a bit of empathy for women is in order. Exactly. I mean, male bikers in...
But again, Will isn't in opposition to any of that. At no point in that trailer or in the statements Will Ferrell has made has he said that he wants more men to enter women's spaces and abuse women. And again, if you're doing this and then you're using it as a way to go after trans people, then you're just running cover for the people who do commit sexual assaults against women. Cis men, majority, overwhelming majority.
Trump country dive bars might think that your lifestyle is odd. They might talk about it when they go home, but they probably don't hate you. They probably aren't threatened. They probably don't care. Literally at all. But to blow off...
But you keep saying don't care, and then you went on this monstrously long, like, transphobic diatribe about all of this misunderstanding of a lot of different topics in order to be able to push this agenda on other people. You care so deeply about this that it's, you know, worth your time to actually spread misinformation. Not to learn anything about it, but to, again, go on there and be like, you keep changing the science on us. I thought science never changes. Isn't that what science is? Isn't science like a religious doctrine or something? It's a text, and it's always the same. And it's like, no, it changes as our understanding of the world evolves as well. That's part of the entire process of it.
Hey, if you'd like to unlock secret bonus episodes as well as uncensored content, go to patreon.com/theserfs. This show is produced by Anna Loves Riley, Arian McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Jimmy Sombrero, Multimondi, Omni, Political Poppy, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demel, Travis McClinton, Trincell, Words Greenwood, with additional support coming from all of these amazing human beings right here.